I know, I already know what you're gonna say after reading that title. How the could someone not like Elden Ring? And I'm gonna be real, I really do like Elden Ring. I don't have a lot of problems with this game. And I could sit here and tell you it's one of the best PvE experiences of all time, but I'm sure you've heard that a million times. Everyone has been blowing this game so hard its balls are empty, so let's start talking about some issues. Before we get into this, I'm going to make a point. I did not make this video just to shit all over Elden Ring for no reason. I love this game just as much as the next guy, but there is some stuff in this game that absolutely infuriates me to no end, and I think it needs to change. So to start, Elden Ring is technically part of the Souls franchise, and a very, very big part of these games is their PvP communities. After everything is said and done, this game is going to be no different than any other Souls game. Once everyone is tired of playing the story over and over, everyone is going to move on to something different, except for the dedicated sub-communities. Those of course being the Challenge Run community and the PvP community. In Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3, I stuck around PvP for literal years after those games fell off. I've always loved Souls PvP, and it's been my bread and butter since day one. But Elden Ring's PvP, you know, it's got some issues. So number one, PvP requirements. If you don't already know, Elden Ring has one specific difference from the other Souls games, and it's one I absolutely cannot stand. From what I understand, you cannot be invaded unless you have a summoned gold phantom in your world. So with that, there are two possible outcomes if you invade. 50% of the time, you are going to get ganked. There's no way around it. The only exception to this is if the gold phantom leaves or dies as you are loading in. The other 50% of the time, you are going to invade someone that has already walked through a boss door or is about to, because most people are only summoning phantoms to help them with boss fights. So why is this a problem? Well, invaders are already at a disadvantage. I mean, you start with half your regular flasks, so the host already has a 1-up. Now you're going to throw in getting ganked all the time? That really doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Plus, the areas you are going to get the most invasions in are going to be around boss doors, because that's where most people are going to be summoning. I mean, the only people that are going to be summoning away from boss doors are going to be either people that are actually waiting for invaders that are just there to gank them, or people that just are so terribly bad at the game that they can't even clear a basic area by themselves. Also, hosts cannot be interrupted when walking through fog gates, so sprinting to the boss door has never been easier. I miss the days of Dark Souls 2 where you could just backstab someone out of going into a boss room. That was the shit, dude. That was the best. Invasion duels are pretty much dead. I can count on one hand how many invasion duels I've actually had, and they were all situations where a gold phantom disconnected. To be honest, I personally have stopped invading entirely because this game's invasion system is completely stacked against the invader. Almost every invasion I get in this game is a group of people that have cleared out the area and are purposefully waiting for invaders just to delete them on spawn. And you know, everyone's running a cheese build now, so you pretty much have no chance. Either that, or you just immediately get sent home because the host went to a boss fight. It's kind of a lose-lose for you if you invade. Maybe I just have really bad luck, but this is literally every invasion I get. I don't think I've had more than probably 5 legitimate duels from invasions. On top of all that, this game is still using the stupid old Souls mechanic that doesn't let you summon friendly phantoms in an area if the boss has been defeated. This mechanic did not translate well into Elden Ring, coupled with the new invasion restrictions. Oh, and another thing, if you get summoned by a red sign for a heavy quotes honor duel, and the host really wants to, they can just manually send you back to your world. So that's pretty cool. That was sarcasm, by the way, for those of you who didn't catch it. Now, I think this first issue is partly what drives the second issue. And speaking of the second issue, number 2, build variety and viability. Before we get into this, I need to introduce you to something I like to call a soft limitation. Now, a soft limitation is a set of parameters that isn't going to prevent you or lock you out of doing something, but choosing to do things outside of them will put you at a significant disadvantage. So now that we've established that, let's move on. In old Souls games, there were plenty of things that weren't very viable in PvP. Like faith casting has pretty much gotten the short end of the stick every single time, but with Elden Ring, the viability gap is massive. Bigger than I have ever seen in any game. Period. So after hours and hours of PvPing in this game, one thing stuck out to me more than anything. Everyone looks and builds the exact same way. There are only a few builds I see people running, and these builds are pretty hefty soft limitations. If you build outside of these builds, you're pretty much going to get clapped every time. Sorcerer Moonveil spam, Quickstep Colossal Sword poke spam, Frenzy builds, instant blood proc builds, Great Shield Turtle Spear builds, and occasionally Melania's hand spam or Sword of Night and Flame spam. As a matter of fact, you'll see some of these builds being used in the background footage of this video. Notice I used the word spam in some of those. That's because most people are just spamming one specific attack or small set of attacks over and over until you lose. All of those builds will delete you in about 1 to 3 hits. Pretty much anything that isn't those builds listed is not viable. I'm sure there's some more busted stuff out there that I've yet to come across given this game is pretty new, but the fact that it is so new and there's already such a massive power discrepancy between builds is a little scary and has me worried for Elden Ring's PvP lifespan. Let's go ahead and hit every single one of those builds I listed and give a quick rundown of what makes them so incredibly ridiculous and unfun to fight against. Moonveil spam. To PvP with any consistent success, I personally started running Moonveil. And what do you know, I'm winning fights left and right and one-shotting half the people I hit with it. There's no reason a weapon like Moonveil should exist. The art comes out almost instantly, it can easily hit for 1,000+ damage. It's like a Moonlight Greatsword that has no charge up time. It takes almost the same amount of time to do a weapon art R2 that it does to do a regular R1. That just doesn't make any sense to me. I'm sitting here using it, and I'm still telling you it takes very little effort to win fights. This weapon takes absolutely 0 skill. You just hold left trigger and press right trigger, and if you hit them with it, they're probably gonna die, or almost die. Next up is Quickstep Colossal. Quickstep, or more importantly, let's be real, Bloodhound Step, gives you a ridiculous amount of iframes. You can avoid literally anything with Bloodhound Step, and I seriously mean anything except crippling depression. That'll always catch you no matter how far you run. Pair that with a colossal sword that has the rolling poke attack and boom. All you have to do with this build is spam Bloodhound Step every time you're about to get hit and then press R1. It's literally as simple as that. The poke will come out almost instantly and hit for like half their health. This build is ridiculously hard to even deal damage to because of the massive amount of iframes you have all the time. Fighting this build will definitely make you consider spiking your controller through your desk, because yeah, I've been there. It's so overpowered. It's so overpowered. Everyone's doing the same thing, dude. Like, you're just dead. Colossal swords naturally deal really high damage, and this build just spams the quickest attack in the moveset. Other content creators have even come out and said this build is really OP. Frenzy builds. For anyone that has played this game enough knows that I don't really have to explain much here. Frenzy, also known as Madness, is one of the most powerful status effects in the game. You just spam attacks with a frenzy weapon or spell until your opponent gets frenzied. Then they get stunned for about 3 to 4 seconds, and that's it. You get a free charged R2 or anything else you want to hit them with, really. You have plenty of time. Oh, I'm dead, because I got Madness. They're both using Madness spears. Nice, dude. What makes this so strong is the garbage netcode that From Software keeps using. You can tell this netcode is pretty much the exact same from Dark Souls 3, and it has the exact same issues. Even if you avoid the damage of a hit, you still might take the status buildup from that hit, which is why status effects in general are so incredibly strong in this game. And Frenzy being Frenzy just makes it that much worse. Instant blood proc. It's all pretty much in the name, but I'll still explain. Most of the time, I see this being done with a spear or a katana buffed with blood. All this build has to do is R1 you once and you get blood procced and take 1200-ish or more damage. If you somehow don't get procced on the first hit, the second one definitely will. This doesn't really need any further explanation, and this only got worse with the fix to weapons like Rivers of Blood. Obviously, this is a really annoying one. Great Shield Spear Turtling. This build takes advantage of the fact that Elden Ring has no good way to break someone's guard. Oh my goodness, do I miss Dark Souls 2 guard breaking. All you have to do is run a Great Shield, high endurance, use the Great Shield talisman, run a spear, and just poke from behind the shield. I also often see this build mixed with the instant bleed proc to make it even more of a headache. So they're untouchable and they poke you once and you get blood procced. Super fun, am I right guys? Doesn't that sound like a blast? Honestly, it just keeps getting worse the longer we talk about this. Lastly is Melania's hand spam or Sword of Night and Flame spam. These are simple but still really strong. Both these weapons have the capability to delete you in like one Art of War. Night and Flame can do it with pretty much either of its weapon art attacks, and Melania's Blade Flurry attack, I mean, we've all seen it at this point. Again, these are simple, but they hit like a truck. These aren't nearly as bad as the rest of the stuff I mentioned. That's kind of why I just tack them on at the end, because these are a lot more counterable, but they're still worth mentioning. If you have any more examples of ridiculous or overpowered builds that I didn't mention, leave them in the comments below. Outside of your core stat build and weapon choices, there is another soft limitation. I know, exciting, right? The majority of people running a melee-based build all have at least one thing in common: heavy armor. You have to wear heavy armor. Well, that is if you want to be competitive. I mean, you don't have to. I'm not telling you what you have to do. I don't want to be that guy, but you know. Sets like the Veteran set, Tree Sentinel set, and of course the Bull Goat are everywhere. High poise and defense are very strong in this game. Running one of these heavy sets while running poise boosting items will make you virtually unstaggerable to smaller weapons. There is of course a possible counterplay to this, which is jump R2s, because they do a ton of poise damage. But not even that is guaranteed to get you a stagger, especially when stuff like hyper poise gets involved. Because of this, great and colossal weapons are a pretty safe option because they will consistently stagger almost anyone. But still, not a guaranteed counter. Any small weapon that isn't explicitly known to be very strong or just cheese is going to have a very hard time fighting high poise and high defense players. Running high poise in this game is the epitome of W key equals win. Whenever you see your opponent swing, just swing back. You'll just tank their hit and hit them for like twice the damage because you're wearing heavy armor. Obviously, it is still possible to have success with other weaker builds, but it's so much harder to do so. Harder than it should be, by a long shot. Number 3, status effect potency. I touched on this a little bit earlier when I talked about FromSoft's trash netcode, but status effects in general are just nuts. The main offenders are Bleed, Frostbite, Frenzy, and Scarlet Rot. Bleed is way too easy to proc given how much damage it can do. Frostbite is also very easy to proc and also deals pretty high damage. Frenzy basically wins you the fight once you proc it. And Scarlet Rot is also way too easy to proc and deals some pretty serious dot damage. And with stuff like Scarlet Rot and Frostbite, these can be applied extremely easily with the dragon spells. Pretty much the only way to avoid those is if you are running Bloodhound Step, so pretty much Bloodhound Step is a must-use in PvP at this point, because if you come across someone who's using it and you're not using it, you're so behind. Like, they are going to walk all over you. What can they do? Some old habits need to die hard with Elden Ring, those being the carried over summoning restrictions from past games. This game is open world, and I think the world should be, open to everyone at all times. That includes summons and invaders. Boss kills should not affect summoning or invading, and solo invasions need to be implemented as soon as possible. There have been a couple times I got solo invasions and it seemed like a phantom wasn't in the world, but I'm not sure if that was something like the Phantom disconnected as I was loading in, because I know this game's servers are pretty trash right now. The amount of disconnects I've seen over the past week or so is absolutely nuts, but that's a whole nother issue. I won't even get started on that. Balance changes obviously need to be made. More than anything, either bring down the power of the really OP stuff or bring up the power of other stuff just to sort of like level everything out, because there is way too much of a power discrepancy between builds. Like, I understand there should be like a power difference between stuff, like not everything should be incredibly strong, but the gap right now is insanely high. Like, when you have stuff like Bleed that'll pretty much immediately kill you, there's really no contest when you're using something like, a mace or a hammer that isn't using something else broken. I mean, there's plenty of stuff in this game that is broken, but if you aren't using the broken stuff, you're pretty much screwed. Actually, no, you're completely screwed. The more viable options we have to build with, the better this game is going to be. Trust me, build variety is something you want. It'll make the game way more interesting and more fun for everyone. No one wants to fight the same busted stuff over and over again. It's not fun, even when you're winning. And when you finally get bored of spamming the same thing over and over again, what are you gonna do? So other than that stuff, what else sucks about Elden Ring? Honestly, what sucks more than anything is all of the people screaming about how this game's PvE is too hard. Much like Dark Souls, Elden Ring is not a hard game. It's only hard if you make it hard, much like a PS. Obviously, you can just cheese every boss, but if you want to play the game how it's meant to be played, it's still not difficult. I know everyone crying on Twitter about it would have you think otherwise, but if you rush to every main boss fight before you've leveled or upgraded anything, then yes, the game is going to be very hard. Unless, of course, you're just good at Souls combat. Elden Ring rewards you for exploring and taking your time. Explore dungeons, farm runes and smithing stones, level your stuff up, and the game is like trivial. Can the game still be tricky sometimes? Sure, of course it can. But for the last time, this game is not hard. It's soft. Much like me when I'm playing PvP. Listen, I really love Elden Ring, but I'm already getting so tired of the PvP because it's simply just not as fun as PvP in Dark Souls was. And let's be real, Souls PvP was not perfect. It was far from it, but we somehow downgraded from it with this. And this has really been a bummer for me. I was really excited to start streaming Elden Ring PvP a lot, but after playing so many hours of it, I don't know if I will anymore. The only way to get any entertainment out of this game for me is just to run a busted build, and even then it's not very fun, as all you do is spam the same broken stuff over and over again until your opponent stops moving. And for me, it's like watching paint dry. It's really not a good time. Unless you like watching paint dry, then maybe you should just go watch paint dry, because it's probably going to be more fun than Elden Ring's PvP. I personally have always really enjoyed getting really creative with builds and changing it up a lot, but that's unfortunately not a viable option in Elden Ring. Like, I made a build recently that was basically a cosplay of Marika, and if you play through the game, you know who Marika is. And I was using Marika's hammer and everything, and that build was really fun, but it just wasn't very good because it wasn't broken. I wasn't using Moonveil, or I wasn't using Melania's hand, or I wasn't using, a bleed. It wasn't as fun as I would have liked it to be. Anyway, I really hope they make some serious changes because I really want to keep playing Elden Ring, but I already have 2 characters that have completely finished the game, and PvP just ain't it right now. To put it plain and simple, it just sucks. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to drop a like and subscribe, and make sure to follow my Twitch. I'm definitely going to really get into streaming soon. Maybe I'll stream Elden Ring. We'll see if they make some changes. But I'll definitely be streaming stuff like Blade Point, maybe some Smite. There's plenty of other stuff. Leave your recommendations for what you want to see in the comments. But yeah, follow the Twitch, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.